And the second question, I want to dovetail into this, is Corey, you were gone for 20 years. And being gone for 20 years, looking back, this is the internet age. Anybody can check out anybody's background. Where does the internet or your history say that you have been for the last 20 years? So let's start there. How did you guys meet?
As far as I can remember, and what I've documented in my show Wisdom Teachings on Guy TV, is that Corey first emailed me in November 2009. I took photographs of the emails, blocking out certain personal details, including the addresses, but I did put that in the show. As far as I know, I was the first public figure that Corey contacted, and he did share with me an interesting bit of insider information all the way back then, which we've been asked to withhold for certain reasons of confidentiality.
Sure.
It wasn't anywhere near as big as the stuff that he's saying now, but it was significant.
Was it enough for you, David, to go, holy crap?
It validated several things that I'd heard from others, and it was pretty shocking. And I believed that he was telling me the truth because he knew too many things that people shouldn't know unless he saw what he claimed to have seen.
Is it something that you can reveal now?
I just said that I cannot.
Okay. Well, yeah, but I'm gonna be me, David. Gonna be me. I'm gonna ask one more time before the show's out. I promise. Okay.
But again, it's something you could find on the internet. Lots of people have written about this particular issue. He just happened to have very precise specifics about it that were not online.
Right.
And I'm like saying, how does this guy know this stuff? So we continued to exchange email from there on. And, you know, sometimes he was writing me and I didn't respond because I've been really, really busy for many years. He then started to do forum work and then eventually circled back around and wrote me a very shocking email in October of this past year, 2014, and said that he had been working in the secret space program. And the first email was pretty cryptic, but I realized that he was probably onto something. So when we began talking, it turned into Skype calls pretty quickly, and I realized that this guy knows hundreds of things that, as far as I know, no other UFO figure on Earth has heard this from insiders, because I have insiders that nobody else has spoken to. And some of the insiders that have spoken to others have told me a whole lot of things that they did not share with anybody else. So we're starting to deal with a very, very huge story that up until Corey came forward, no one had ever put online, no one had access to. I was quietly keeping it to myself, and I'd never expected any of this stuff was going to make it online.
Corey, with those 20 years that you know, from 1976 to 1986, 87, what does public access information say about that time period, about yourself personally?
That actually will, the 20 and back program is what we're referring to. And people that are familiar with some other people that have come forward know, I guess, of others that have talked about the programs to where people sign up for or are drafted into programs to where they serve for 20 years, and at the end of that 20 years, they are, I guess, on this program, this is not going to sound extremely wild, but they are age regressed and time regressed and brought back to the time that they began the service. So that's from the time I left to the time I served, and then the time I served the 20 years and then came back, only maybe 6 to 8 minutes had passed in the real-time timeline that we would see.
And is your own mind, Corey, and help me out on this if I don't ask the question the right way, your own mind is still linear. In other words, the 20 years is still there, right? Yeah, and you remember all
Yes.
of it, but
Well, the, they make you a whole lot of promises that they don't intend to keep. They promise you will never have to pay for college. You'll have a very comfortable life when you come back and you know go into a mainstream life. And they never intend on keeping the promises they make to you, because at the end of the 20 years of service, when they bring you back to the Lunar Operation Command facility and take you to the area to where they age regress you, which is a long process. They have to keep you totally immobile and almost in a comatose state for, I'm told, approximately 2 weeks for them for the process of regressing you back to your to the age you were when you started off. They also do what they call blank slating, which is they mind wipe you. And this is it's fairly effective in most cases, but 3 to 5% of people, the blank slating, especially the blank slating techniques they were using in the 70s and 80s, 3 to 5% of the people, it didn't work properly. And often they were intuitive empaths. And
okay,
I've discussed... Go ahead.
Corey,
Go ahead.
yeah. Let me stop you there because we're going to start to get ahead of ourselves. So, but what I wanted to do was set the stage for this is for a lot of people that have never heard your story, is going to be a lot for them to absorb. So, in some instances, we need to try to break this down and
Sure.
and so let's back up. Okay, so 20 years, 1976, 1986, 87, you were in the MyLab program, and you were regressed and brought back. Okay, so now we understand how that happened. Now let's go ahead. What is the MyLab program?
Well, I've learned that a lot of people have a lot of preconceived ideas that MyLab equals super soldier program, which is one of the programs that falls under the MyLab umbrella in the programs. There are hundreds of different programs. MyLab is a term that was coined, I believe, back in the 90s, and it's just short for military abduction. And the military abductions can be for any number of things. People that have been abducted by extraterrestrials, they can be what they call MyLabbed. The military abducts them to find out why ETs are interested in them. People can be MyLabbed or abducted on a short-term basis, a one-time basis, or a long-term basis if they are brought into some of these programs that they use to train people from a very young age for what they're going. They'll identify people at a very young age that have what they call gifts or what they consider special. And they want to get them at a young age before the real world comes in and tells them certain things are not possible. And
I see. So MyLab, which it should be MIL-AB, right? Military abduction, as opposed to like military laboratory. You know, so my lab
Well,
is military.
MILAB is how you'll see it
And-
spelled on the internet, all caps.
And what made you so special? Did they tell you, or did you know in advance?
Well, that's a buzzword, the special word.
Sure it is. Sure it is.
You know, they use that word to try to pump up your ego, even at a very young age, to tell you, you're special. You have a preordained mission in this life, and we're helping you to make the best of that. And there's a whole lot of propaganda that they use to try to get you to usually do their bidding. But I was having weird experiences early on, but at the age of 6, I had been identified through testing in public schools, through some standardized testing, even way back then, and I had been identified as an intuitive empath. And
what is an intuitive empath?
Well, if you're empathic, you feel other people's emotions. You have a very strong connection to other people emotionally. You will know what another person is feeling, and you can have a connection with them. And then once you learn how to use that, you can then begin to understand what they are thinking, why they may be feeling that way. Intuitive is self-explanatory. You have a very strong intuition.
Did you know that you had these abilities at the age of 6?
You really don't understand that kind of thing when you're at that age. That's at the age to where you take that kind of thing for granted. That's before your parents beat that kind of thing out of you. That's not possible. That's not scientific. That's before the world gets a hold of you and takes all of your faith and the magical things in life away.
And David, you can jump in here because I actually want your insight on this, but you made a couple of statements, Corey, about the amount of people that were on the manta ray, the stingray ship. It held, I think the number was like 600. That's an extraordinary, it seems to me, a large amount, not only to be on a ship, but just in general in the program. Was everybody on that ship 6 years old?
No, and that was the capacity of the ship, and it also it could hold up to 600 people, and it also could be, I guess, it's kind of modular in a way to where it could be configured to transport cargo also.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just trying to get a grasp of the amount of other people in the program. If there were 600 on the ship, there's no telling how many are going to be there when you arrived or how many have been, recruited before you got there. It seems like an extraordinarily large number. Do either of you have an idea of what that number is?
Well, this program was already quite large. There were already, many hundreds of thousands of people that were in these programs. If you remember, David, help me. When did the brain drain begin? Was it in the 50s?
Yeah, it started in the 1950s, and according to my insider, Pete Peterson, who is willing to go forward with this publicly. It was actually 60 million people. And what they did is they pulled the best and brightest scientific minds and their families from countries all over the world. These people told whoever their friends were that they were going to work overseas in a foreign assignment. They would write a series of postcards before they left, and then those postcards would be mailed over the course of about 5 years, after which time it would just dry out, and then their friends would never hear from them again. And in this way, they were able to populate this space program with a very large number of people who are all now mandated to have kids as soon as they get to be old enough.
Now, to somebody that's listening to this for the first time, I'm going to ask both of you the same question. What kind of evidence would you guys put forward to support this? We're speaking to an audience, two different people listening, one that are familiar with everything that we're talking about right now, and then there's the other that are hearing this for the first time, and they are saying really loud right now, okay, but where's the evidence? So how do you respond to that?
I would start with asking them questions, okay? Roswell happened 70 years ago. Would you be listening to this show if you didn't believe that the United States government, at the very least, got access to extraterrestrial discs that they could fly? If they can fly them, why wouldn't they go into space? If they can go into space, why wouldn't they build something? If they can build something, why wouldn't they send people there? If they can send people there, why wouldn't eventually one of them come forward? That's what's happened.
And Corey? Same question.
Well, as far as the brain drain goes, I think there's been quite a lot of evidence put forth that many people of scientific and engineering backgrounds disappeared basically off the face of the earth back in the 50s, and again, it happened in waves going even up into the 80s. So I don't think really that's really up for debate. I mean, David, do you have hasn't that pretty much been established?
Well, yeah, and I'll also point out that if you have a Netflix account, you can go on there and watch a television show called Ascension, which absolutely blew my mind. I have documented records of Pete Peterson telling me about 2 space probes that were sent out, and that the name of the scientist that developed these probes was Ensman. And I won't say his first name because it's different than the one they used in the show, but the last name was the same. And in the show Ascension, they talk about the brain drain, and they talk about the idea also that certain people are put out as plants online so that if you start to find out the truth, you will be steered towards certain websites, and those sites are actually controlled by people who are deliberately finding out who knows the truth and shutting them down, sometimes lethally. So the television show Ascension is a story about the secret space program, a group of people who think they're in space, and nothing has changed since the 1960s for them. There is a preponderance of evidence that has been collected about the brain drain. A lot of that work was done many years ago, so it's pre-internet era, but you can still, if you're a diligent researcher, find lots and lots of data about that. As far as the broad stroke portrait of the secret space program itself, these people have done an incredibly good job of keeping it secret. And one of the things that I like to say is the Manhattan Project was what developed the atomic bomb. It employed 140,000 people, and it went on for 6 years. And until the bomb actually went off, no one squealed, no one leaked it, none of those people came forward, the public didn't know anything about it, and it was a vast operation. So it is.
There's so many examples of that, David. You're absolutely right. The SR-71, the F-117, all of those areas, we didn't know about it until they wanted us to know.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's no question about that.
So anybody who says, well, I'm a skeptic and the government can't even hide a file in a file cabinet. No. You got to understand here. This is not a file in a file cabinet. We're talking about a very, very vast program where they wanted to make